Divided by borders, united by flus. By Tay El Riula, Flus Limited.
What is common between cities like Nicosia, Homs, Belfast? Can anyone take a guess? What is something in common? They are all separated by walls. In 1989, the world was divided by 15 walls. Today, in 2022, we have 77 walls dividing cities around the world. Physical, tangible, real walls. Building up walls today is part of a global trend. And they're using barbed wires, they use surveillance technology, and they use financial laws. Nick Buxton, a researcher from Transitional Institute, he said to the New York Times that no matter how many walls you build, people will always find a way around it. And personally, I couldn't agree more with him, because when there is a Tay, there is always a way. Good afternoon, AIBC Summit. My name is Tay. I'm the author of the Invisible Sun book. I hold a Master's of Sciences in Digital Currencies and Blockchain Technology, and I'm the co-founder of Flus. Flus, in Arabic, it means money. And we are MENA's first localized, keyless, and non-custodial crypto wallet. And we're here to bring and to connect the world one transfer at a time. The idea for Flus did not start in Palo Alto, in my parents' garage, or in a cafe in New York City. It started in the most unexpected places on earth, in a Dutch refugee camp. I'm born in Kuwait for Syrian parents, and in 2014, I landed in an asylum center in the Netherlands. And I stayed there for 2 years. And there we started thinking and experiencing how crypto and blockchain technology is changing the world. Now, of course, when we say a refugee camp, the food menu is not from a 5-star experience. So in the morning, we had 2 slices of bread with some cheese. For lunch, we had 2 boiled eggs and a cup of soup. And for dinner, it was half-cooked rice and some vegetables. When I went to the camp, all what I had on me was this: smartphone, internet connection, and a crypto wallet. And as I was tired from eating the same food every single day, I remembered that the first physical product sold on the Bitcoin network, what was it? Pizza. So what do you think happened next? I ordered the largest pepperoni pizza I could find online, and I let it be delivered to the camp. And it was chaos. It was chaos because the guards at the refugee camp, they were asking, how did this come here? And the refugees were asking, how did you pay for it? We had cash in our pockets, but cash doesn't fly, and we cannot transact online with it. In today's value, it might be the second most expensive pizza ever bought. But if you ask me, do I regret it? I would say absolutely not, for two reasons. One, it was delicious. And second, it opened my eyes for something that Bitcoin did not ask me for my first name, my last name, my date of birth, my address, my credit card number, my PayPal account, or even my shoe size. All what I needed to do was download an application, and I am financially connected to the rest of the world. And I felt invincible owning Bitcoin in a refugee camp because I could break barriers. I can break the walls. I can transact in a permissionless and borderless manner. Yet, I was still afraid. I was afraid because if I lose my phone, I would lose my crypto. And if I write the seed phrase on the back of an envelope and I lose it, I would lose my money. And today, we have a $2 trillion industry that is still relying on a piece of paper to back up your money. So since then, we were thinking, how can we change that? How can we make access to crypto so easy, like holding a phone? How can we change this user experience in writing your seed phrases on a piece of paper? And the answer was staring right at me on a mirror. It was my face. So together with a brilliant team, we started working on Flus, the non-custodial wallet that uses face recognition to retrieve private keys when lost. And we believe by lowering the barrier to entry and improving user experience, we are able to include more people into crypto and, more importantly, increase the number of financial inclusion. Because today, financial institutions are forcing requirements that are excluding 2 billion people around the world from their services. Since 2015, we have been championing the adoption of crypto in regions like Lebanon, Egypt, Jordan, Iraq, Somalia, and even Afghanistan, where people need it the most. And we're just starting. Even more, in August 2020, when the Beirut explosion happened, the NGOs were able to use crypto to bridge value back home to Lebanon, where I was raised, where the country is still passing through a devastating financial crisis. They were able to use crypto to bridge value. And with our network of verified agents, we provided crypto to cash conversions in a legal and a safe manner. In a way, it is simple, secure, and sovereign. No bank, no institution can take their money away anymore. And not even that. In 2021, the American army withdrew from Afghanistan. Can you take a guess which company stopped working immediately? Western Union and MoneyGram. And here, crypto again proved to be permissionless, borderless. The Afghan diaspora in London, in Canada, in US, in the Netherlands, were able to purchase products from online supermarkets, ship them back home, and let it be delivered at the doorsteps of their loved ones in areas like Herat, Kabul, and Kandahar. and it was paid by crypto. So today, in emerging technologies, in a world where we're hearing about NFTs, Web3, and the metaverse, our mission at Flus since day one has been the same: to connect and break financial barriers and connect the rest of the world to the crypto economy and connect them to the largest economy on earth, the internet, and the most visited place on earth, which is the internet. So no matter what barriers are today or tomorrow, we still stand by our mission, and we still believe that the world will be forever connected by crypto and united by Flus. Thank you so much for attending, and thank you, Iman, for hosting us today.
Blockchain in a Regulated World. By Lars Seier Christensen, Concordium.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be back in Dubai. I'm Lars Seier Christensen. I'm the chairman of the Concordium Foundation. But I want to just tell you my background for speaking on this subject. When I was a young man, I spent several years in London, in the financial world. Subsequently, in 1992, I co-founded Saxo Bank, which we also have here in Dubai and have been for maybe 15 years, I think. I retired from Saxo Bank around about beginning of 2016, focused on my own family office. And inside that, I have a lot of fun and interesting and weird investments, but the most important one is really Concordium and a number of other blockchain-related activities. Now, I think I bought my first Bitcoin in 2012, and that was even after a year of skepticism. So I was fairly early adopter of that space, and I was very enthusiastic about it. Maybe because one of the key things we did in Saxo Bank was trading traditional currencies. And although it wasn't obvious at the time, it looked a lot like a currency to me, and maybe something we could offer to our clients. So I was quite enthusiastic about it. I also knew the Ethereum people prior to launch and tried to be an ambassador very early on in the traditional finance sector, which is not easy today, but you can begin to imagine what it was like in 2012, 2013. Subsequently, I became a bit skeptical myself because my compliance people came up with a lot of reservations at Saxo Bank. And also, of course, while I had this interest in crypto, I was at the same time the CEO of Saxo Bank, where I was continuously watching what happened to regulation in the traditional space, and that's only going one way, since that actually was kind of the Wild West back in the 80s. But subsequently, it's just been going one way, and it was quite clear to me at the time that what was available in the early generations would not really cut it in a regulated world. Subsequently, I think that was also a pretty unpopular theme in 2016, 2017. But I've turned back to more enthusiasm now because I think that people have got a more realistic view that regulation is also going to come to blockchain in a big way, and probably in more or less the same way as we know from the traditional finance sector. So it's absolutely inevitable. There's not a 99% chance that this space will be heavily regulated. There's 100% chance, and you might as well accept that and try to address it rather than change jurisdictions all the time, because it's only a question before it will catch up on a global scale. It is actually desirable in many ways. It helped the traditional financial space become much more organized, get much more adoption, be much more interesting to many more clients. So in many ways it's constructive, and I think we have to see it as a constructive development. You know, we will see mainstream adoption when this space is adequately regulated and not before. And I think we shouldn't fool ourselves. We don't have mainstream adoption today. We talk a lot about DeFi, but I would say even a small bank like Saxo Bank, and Saxo Bank is a small bank, has more assets than the total that are currently being deployed in DeFi. So it just shows that we haven't got mainstream adoption. We haven't got anywhere near institutional adoption. And in order for that to happen, regulation needs to happen. So this is, without a doubt, the most important thing in blockchain right now. The key challenges that this space needs to address is first and foremost anonymity. That's a no-go in mainstream adoption. It's a no-go certainly in the financial sector, but it's also a no-go for most serious companies in other industries, not just driven by regulation, but also driven by self-regulation and consumer demand. The ESG concerns are obvious. I'm not going to go into that. There are a number of problems around scalability, which is currently being solved in various ways, but we have to realize that when we leave a real blockchain, we're moving into somewhere a side chain where we're making serious compromises between security and scalability. And while that may be acceptable to some business cases, it's certainly not acceptable if, for example, a financial institution should commit to use cases that will turn over billions and ultimately trillions of dollars. The anonymity also allows for a lot of fraud, which obviously keeps out mainstream adoption. And the DeFi space, interesting as it is, and with many innovations that are relevant for the traditional financial sector, it is also marred by a number of problems that makes it unacceptable to real mainstream financial institution adoption. But a lot of people are sniffing at it, a lot of people are looking at it, a lot of people can see some benefits, but they can't really get involved until we have some kind of environment where both regulators are more clear on what they want, and we as an industry are more clear that we actually are willing to accept it. Now, I addressed anonymity right at the outset because I think that is a key problem. ID is the cornerstone of any society. If you don't know that I'm Lars, with certainty, all of the rest doesn't matter. What does KYC, what does AML matter if you don't know the ultimate identity? And in my view, and in Concordium views, ID is a layer 1 obligation. It's not a layer 2 use case. And when you hear about people talking about ID, it is always layer 2 use cases. Now, layer 2 use cases are fine, but it will always leave you isolated or in a silo where really what you need to address is that the entire distributed blockchain addresses this problem so you can easily interact with it without always having to build your own layer 2 IDs on top. KYC and AML, on the other hand, are clearly layer 2 use cases because KYC is a million things. ID is one thing. Either I'm Lars or I'm not Lars. It's binary. But KYC is completely different if you want to be a member of the local golf club where they just need to know that you live in the area and you have a low handicap. It's totally different if you want to trade soybeans denominated in Japanese yen on a sophisticated derivative at Saxo Bank. So these are layer 2 use cases, but ID is not. And we should also remember, as has been pointed out on stage earlier, that at this point regulation is jurisdictional. So you cannot build a KYC or a solution that will address everything at the same time, but you can deliver the fundamental building blocks, which is the ID, and make yourself ready for it. Now I have good news because I think the regulators will ultimately learn to love blockchain one day, and they will because of the transparency that's implicit. I traded foreign exchange for 30 years of my life. And that's an extremely opaque business with lots of counterparts. And if you have a serious problem there, like an AML case, well, always the trail will disappear in some difficult jurisdiction that doesn't want to give out information. And ultimately, if you imagine the entire foreign exchange trading in the world on a blockchain, you would have an excellent trail and you'd be able to follow all of the transactions, which is exactly what a regulator is looking for. So they will like it and they will adopt it. But we, as an industry, need to also be willing to commit to it. There's a whole bunch of use cases, I'm not going to go through it, that are very obvious for an ID-based regulated blockchain, and many, many things that are not possible without it and will not be possible to gain mainstream adoption from financial institutions. Right now, there's a lot of great things about blockchain, but we do not live on planet blockchain, and I'm sorry to say we probably never will, because you have an existing legal framework that can still be brought into play. You have reasonable consumer protection demands. You try to disintermediate, but if you do that, you still need to have people accountable, seen from a regulator's point of view. Smart contracts will ultimately be expected to be compliant to certain standards. Settlement negotiations is the way that I would say nearly most disputes are solved, and that's outside of the blockchain. And of course, court proceedings, even if you have your stuff on a blockchain, you can't really prevent from being sued. But we have a real chance here because we haven't got a lot of legacy legislation. We don't have a lot of national interest that needs to be protected. And there's a very big potential, I would say, certainly in the EU, for example, making a broad framework for all 27 nations. And all of this is being addressed and is being pursued by the EU Commission, which I think is very positive. So I see a lot of, in fact, I'm a true believer in blockchain's transformative potential. Never seen anything like it since I was lucky to find the internet very early on. When we launched our first trading platform, there was probably less than 25 million users globally. But we need to address these issues. And instead of skirting them, instead of jurisdictional arbitrage, which can work for a while, meet it head on. Speak to regulators, get them to understand that they shouldn't throw out the baby with the bathwater, but instead embrace it for all that it can actually be used for. I'm just flicking through this, not because I'm expecting you to read it, but because if you go with this QR code, you can see the whole presentation where we explain things in a little more detail and what makes us special in terms of our very sincere attempt to address and comply with future regulation. Thank you very much.